The EPA is seeking to cancel the scientific basis, so-called scientific basis, for climate regulation. Thank f***ing God. Basically, 2009, the EPA put out an endangerment finding. This is where the whole idea that CO2 was bad for the environment, and this would lead to massive regulation, somewhere between 10 and 20,000 new regulations that would choke the life out of industry all across the U.S., leading to a rise in expenses and a slowdown of production at every turn. Axios writes, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin said Tuesday he is issuing draft plans to overturn the agency's 2009 scientific finding that greenhouse gases threaten human health and welfare. Thank God. This has been the bane of America's existence for the last 20 years. It's been one of those horrible, horrible rulings that they did that allowed the government to start squeezing agencies, to start squeezing industry at every turn, all in the name of saving the climate. Well, all it really did was give more and more power and control to the federal government to control how you and I and everyone else lives their lives. A move, that Axios reminds us, is guaranteed to spark litigation. Why it matters. They're going to tell us why it matters. President Donald Trump's most direct efforts to rip out climate regulations root and branch and make it harder for a successor to impose new ones. So if you get rid of this endangerment finding, it'll be much harder to simply just slap on regulations without congressional approval, because that's what the EPA was doing here. Once they had done this, they could just willy-nilly add regulations. And so they did. The endangerment finding provides a key legal underpinning for regulating heat-trapping gases from cars, power plants, and more under the Clean Air Act. Driving the news. This has been referred to as basically driving a dagger into the heart of the climate change religion, Zeldin said on Ruthless, the popular conservative podcast where he announced the plan. And he is right. This will absolutely gut the attempts by the zealots, the climate zealots, from continuing to crack down on the industrial engine of the United States. Because, my friends, oil, gas, coal, these are the economic engines of freedom in the West. No amount of solar or wind is going to replace oil and gas at this juncture. Maybe somewhere down the road the technology will evolve enough, but for right now, it's not. And all it has done is to steal freedoms from you and I and make everything more expensive. Now, EPA first signaled in March that it would attempt to overturn the decision. E&E News reported that it is being paired with a proposal to roll back climate rules for cars and trucks. EPA issued the finding in response to a landmark 2007 Supreme Court decision, Massachusetts versus the EPA, which held that greenhouse gases are pollutants under the Clean Air Act. God, I'm glad this is getting pulled back. I can't even explain to you how much I have hated this decision. The ruling led then President Obama in 2009 to issue an order allowing the EPA to establish emission standards for sources shown to reasonably affect health and welfare. It was a way to steal power and control from the average people out there, from the average citizen. Zeldin has said the decision stipulated that the EPA was authorized but not obligated to regulate greenhouse gases. Researchers and environmentalists have warned ahead of the proposal that it conflicts with the scientific consensus on the unfolding harms from climate change. But of course, scientific consensus is not science. Consensus means nothing when it comes to science. It is what can you prove? Repeatedly prove. There was a time when the consensus was that the world was flat. Didn't mean it was so. Consensus has been a dangerous word that has been thrown around for well over a decade now, and too many people have bought into it. The big picture, Axios writes, it is called dangerous and a breach of our government's responsibility to protect the American people from this devastating pollution, the Environmental Defense Fund said ahead of the long-expected plan. Devastating pollution from the sea levels rising, from the ice melting, which never seems to happen. And Dan Becker of the Center for Biological Diversity said in a statement Tuesday that by revoking this key scientific finding, Trump is putting fealty to big oil over sound science in people's health. State of play. Zeldin argued that he is in favor of less pollution and cast emission rules as a distraction, saying that this is an economic issue. That's right. We want clean air, land, and water. Conservatives love the environment, want it to be good stewards of the environment. But he alleged that there are people who want to bankrupt the country in the name of battling climate change. And that is precisely what's happening. A friction point, Axios writes, because they want us to know that there is friction here. Zeldin said that the agency welcomes a battle over what he called faulty conclusions about climate harms. The EPA administrator would make the final determination after a public comment period. He said, "We're going to go out to public comment. We're not afraid of allowing the public to weigh in." Now, certain legal battles if and when the EPA finalizes the draft proposal after the comment period. That's what they're telling you to watch for. Opponents of EPA's greenhouse gas regulations might be able to fast-track their elimination by bringing lawsuits alleging that without an underlying endangerment finding, the rules are arbitrary and capricious. And that is going to be the best part about this. It's trillions and trillions of dollars worth of regulations that are strangling this country and have been since that stupid rule went into effect. And it is amazing to see rationality actually come back into our government at some form. I never thought I would live to see this day. I honestly did not. So this is another story talking about this very issue. This is from the New York Post. Trump rolling back trillions of dollars of Dem green car regulations. $1 trillion worth of Obama-era greenhouse gas regulations for cars, trucks, and engines will be axed this year, along with the unpopular stop-start feature in vehicles. These stupid environmental regulations have made everything worse for cars, more expensive, more annoying. And that stop-start feature, this is where you come to a halt, the car turns itself off, you have to press the frickin' start button again or press the accelerator for the car to restart. These are annoying features that nobody wanted, nobody asked for, but it was safe for the environment. The EPA proposal to repeal the 2009 endangerment finding represents a major rollback of U.S. climate action and follows President Trump's Day One executive order unleashing American energy. All of this stuff has hurt the United States. For us to remain the world hegemony, for us to remain the world's economic superpower, this garbage must be swept away. The real pollutants, the people that cause the most supposed climate damage when it comes to CO2 emissions, China and India, they're not going to slow down. They only use green energy to sell to the stupid West. It's a wonderful scam for them. They make money on the West, while the West also destroys themselves. We need to ramp up production at every level. And you can't do it with endless regulations squeezing the life out of your industry. You can't stay competitive. It's ridiculous. The EPA's proposal to repeal the 2009 endangerment finding represents a major rollback of U.S. climate action and follows President Trump's... Okay, let's scroll down here. With this proposal, the Trump EPA is proposing to end 16 years of uncertainty for automakers and American consumers, said Zeldin. Stakeholders have told me that the Obama and Biden EPAs twisted the law, ignored a precedent, and warped the science to stick it to American families with hundreds of billions of dollars in hidden taxes every single year. Let's think about the cost increase for vehicles since this stupid law went into effect. It is roughly 40% more expensive to buy cars now than it was before the stupid endangerment finding. It has been a massive tax on the American people. Used cars are up by almost 40 to 70%. So used car prices, 40 to 70% higher. New cars, about 40%. I mean, this is insane. But this is a direct result of the climate zealots' actions here. Makes it harder for people to be able to maneuver. And then when you start to realize that bureaucrats, they love order. They view average people as stupid and chaotic. They don't like this. So what is it that they love above all? Mass transit. If you make it difficult for people to have vehicles, you can weed out a certain percentage of your population from the driving pool. And over time, that will accelerate. But for now, you start to reduce how many people are on the road. That's also part of the plan here. You put a grand, epic threat as the reason to do this, and you can sweep away any kind of logical defense against this. or any kind of practical attempts to slow this down or to stop it. Well, the climate is in danger. We're all going to die. And you get enough people out there who don't see the 50, 60-year trend of global cooling, global warming, global climate change to realize that these predictions never seem to come true. But we must save the planet, so let's just go along with it. Well, Donald Trump saying screw that. So, with this proposal, Zeldin claims the repeal will save Americans as much as $50 billion every year on cheaper cars, by slashing greenhouse gas emission standards on vehicles, including the Biden electric vehicle mandate. He was set to unveil the proposal in Indianapolis Tuesday with Secretary of Energy Chris Wright, Governor Mike Brown, Attorney General Todd Rokita, and Representative Jim Baird of the Indiana Motor Truck Association and the National Automobile Dealers Association. He said, "We heard loud and clear the concern that the EPA's greenhouse gas emission standards themselves, not carbon dioxide, which the finding never assessed independently, was the real threat to Americans' livelihoods." Bing, ding, ding. It finalized rescinding the endangerment finding and resulting regulations would end $1 trillion or more in hidden taxes in American businesses and families. The repeal of the endangerment finding likely will face legal challenges from blue states, of course, naturally, and climate activists, aka the climate lunatics. Another obstacle is the fact that Congress codified greenhouse gases as pollutants in 2022 in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. But you got to make the move to try and pull it back. Root and stem, tear this garbage out. Let's hope that they can actually get that done.